Wales and UK government. Now this is quite a luxury. The only other city deal in the cohort 2 city and growth deals in the whole of the UK that's like ours is the Glasgow city deal. So there's lots of similarities in terms of the way in which we were trying to work. But I think what it affords us to do is to have a real think about the impact that we're trying to make on South East Wales. Rather than having a predefined set of things that we have to do, we get to ask some really big questions about, what is this thing called economic development? What's it all about? Why are we trying to do it? What are we trying to achieve? Has what we've achieved to date been good enough? And I think clearly in the case of the Cardiff Capital Region, we are classified as a laggard economy after all. But I think the answer is no. So we've got to think differently about some of the big problems that we're trying to solve, some of the big challenges that we have to respond to both today and in the future. So I think for us, and in particular the politicians, they're really, really interested in, beyond the economy, how does this really impact people? How does this enable us to invest in confident and capable communities? This thing about real quality of life and really the reason why they're in a job, which is to ensure that they can make a difference. And I think one of the things I want to explore in this set of slides is this concept that Douglas mentioned around inclusive growth. In the Cardiff Capital Region, this point about resilience, being able to withstand some of the big shocks that are coming, in fact some of the shocks that we're seeing right now, is absolutely critical if we're going to be fit for the future. And I think sometimes we've got ourselves into a space where we're in quite a binary debate between growth and, big GBA targets and inclusive growth. And I think our position on it is, shouldn't all growth be inclusive, or at least aim to be inclusive? Surely that's a basic that we would wish to see. So that preparedness for an uncertain future, this perpetual state of transition, is really important for us. So just to introduce the Cardiff Capital Region, in geographical terms, it's Monmouthshire in the east, right across to Bridgend in the west. It's a population of about 1.6 million. And that, as you see there, is our functional economic geography. Our city deal is a triumvirate partnership with those 10 local authorities and with the UK and Wales governments. I always describe it, because I'm a salesperson, as a £5.3 billion city deal, because we have a £4 billion private sector leverage target, with government contributions adding up to about £1.3 billion. 734 million of that goes directly into the South East Wales Metro project. But more than just a functional economic geography, South East Wales is really important because it's that key connection point. It's part of Wales, it looks at England, it's around connectivity of investment and the flow of ideas, intellectual property, technology and talent. But I think more than that, and in particular for my regional cabinet, which is our joint committee governance structure, their clear contention is that if people are in work and they're enabled to develop into better work, higher paid work, they've got more money in their back pockets, which means they have more options and choices for they and their families. If they have more options and choices, they're generating tax yield that helps to pay for the public services that they become less reliant on, meaning there's more money in the pot for those people who will never have the same options and choices. So the social issues and the real community impact, the sort of public purpose of this city deal is extremely resonant with our politicians, and I think it's that public value mindset which is so important for us in this economic programme. So human capital, I think, is a critical factor that we massively underplay, and I think that's so important going forward, because we're seeing the competition for investment now and talent is less between big countries, and it's definitely and increasingly between city regions. So I want to talk a little bit about good growth. So we do have targets that have been set for our city deal. So they are, the usual ones around GBA, jobs and leverage. But again, we don't want to be in danger of doing the wrong things really well or hitting targets that fundamentally miss the point. And I'll give you some examples of that later on. And we've looked at economic growth strategies the world over. And okay, some have done really well, but some have just heightened inequality and made the gap, between the sort of haves and the have-nots even bigger. And we've got to be careful, I think. There's some responsibility bestowed upon us in delivering these growth programmes, that we do it in the right way and not just the easy way. And innovation, yes, we always associate that, don't we, with business and technology, but it is very much associated with the public sector, with civic innovation, with the community sector as well. So again, we've got to be really thoughtful about how we introduce and apply some of these terms. So social justice is a really big responsibility for us, I think. And I suppose one of the challenges that we want to put out there is we feel there's a really big opportunity to match our economic ambitions with much more progressive social policy. So that's not to say that productivity doesn't matter. I think it matters even more than ever. Even though I've said some of those targets can be reversed, productivity is key if you take that as a driver for inclusive growth. And I think, again, we seem to be sort of in this binary debate where we don't want to talk about wealth creation because it seems a bit tawdry and capitalist. But actually, if we're going to have distributed and inclusive growth, we need wealth creation because it's a precursor to things like the foundational economy, which Doug mentioned. So if we've got stagnating productivity, we're going to have stagnating earnings, which has been a key feature of the Cardiff Capital Region for some time. I think the point that I'm trying to make is productivity, as traditionally defined, is always about big business, big technologies, big growth. And I think we do have the opportunity to do something quite fundamentally different in the Cardiff Capital Region. So what we've been doing then, so I have been in my post for about a year now, seems a bit longer than that, 7 days. But what we tried to do really was start off by taking a really good look at what we could do. What could the Cardiff Capital Region be about? Because I think in the past we've suffered from trying to be all things to all people. We reckon we're world leading at loads of things, and we're not. So we did a really good piece of work which gave us a strong evidence base, not just in terms of priority sectors, but in terms of place and where we should be investing to complement what we should be investing in. And working with our Economic Growth Partnership, which is completely business and industry led, they, not us, converted that evidence and that data into our industrial and economic growth plan. And that was really important for industry to lead on that, not for us, not to have just another government document that would be a nice strategy. They were really determined that this would be a focused and very deliverable plan that would set out some of those key priorities. And that plan was then adopted by the Cardiff Capital Region Cabinet. And again, this plan really enables us to break out of the silos. I think one of the really frustrating things sometimes, especially when you work in local government, is we often compartmentalise things into departments and silos, digital, innovation, regeneration, housing, transport. And I think in the city deal context, we've got to get out of that mindset because these things cross-cut, they converge. And what we wanted to do was, rather than saying, okay, this is what housing is going to get out of this is what the third sector is going to get out of this is what transport is going to get out of this, focus on some of the big industrial and societal challenges that we have to solve, and then figure out how those different themes, departments, if you will, make a contribution to those core challenges. And that represents quite a change in thinking, I think. The really difficult bit, which we've been working on for the last 6 months, is how do we convert all these lovely principles that I talked about into a really deliverable framework that does what really needs to be done. And again, in so doing, it's just really important that we have an eye on the future because things are changing rapidly all of the time. It's not just the issues around the Shared Prosperity Fund and what's coming and the fact that that will probably go nowhere near to compensating for the loss of European structural funds. We know from a recent Cardiff University Wales Governance Centre report there's some fiscal analysis that has been done. It shows that we're heading for something of a double whammy in Wales. Because we've got new tax raising powers which are predicated on GBA growth. Every time we take an alternative route to GBA growth and we don't hit those targets, anything we miss out on will effectively be deducted from our block settlement grant that comes from Treasury. So, in terms of the fiscal turbulence that's ahead and the economic turbulence, we've got to be prepared for a fundamentally different future. And I think what we're trying to do in the Cardiff Capital Region is to see our city deal not just as a funding programme, but we're trying to build a foundation to prepare for that radically different future. We're trying to build a new future for an entire region. So our city deal is more of a catalyst, it's not just a funding programme we're going to spend out and move on to something else. It's something really that has to lay these core foundations, because we've got to compete in this brave new world. I was told probably about 8 months ago by UK government there would be no more city deals, which I think is great news, because all the new money that's available is through the UK government industrial strategy. So UK Research and Innovation has about £6.5 billion a year in terms of its budget, and our job now is to compete to make sure some of that investment comes into Wales and the Cardiff Capital Region, which is a different mindset, because I think predominantly in the past, and some of the evidence from places like Innovate UK plays this out, we've gone for grants, and then we've gone for more grants, and then we've gone for even more grants. And that is not sustainable, and our future has to be very different. So we've tried to build our evidence base into an investment framework that seeks opportunities under 3 different headings. We've got an innovation fund, an infrastructure fund, and a competition-based challenge fund. And we will never give a grant. Our money has to be returned back into the pot. And that's not necessarily just financial returns. Value is defined more broadly than just money, as we all know. But it's this principle of having a revolving fund, where we set ourselves up to build resilience and self-reliance for the future. We're always co-investing on projects. It's not just our investment that's going in. There are other things that are there on the table alongside us, and we're always leveraging to the maximum that we possibly can. And I think for me, it comes back to this mantra, we have to be able to live off our interest and not just spend down the capital. And I think, sometimes we spend a lot of time, don't we, arguing for a bigger slice of the pie. We've got to think about a bloody bigger pie sometimes as well, I think. So, in terms of some of the really interesting stuff, I suppose, around economic governance and how that kind of political leadership sits alongside industrial leadership, for us in the Cardiff Capital Region, that's been a really positive path. Politicians are very clear about their role. They're here to lead. They're here because of democratic legitimacy, because they want to make a difference to people's lives. But some of the know-how and the expertise lies in the private sector, in the third sector, and indeed within civic society. So our job is to think about how we unlock some of that. I think a recent sign of governance maturity was the Cardiff Capital Region 10 leaders signing up to the principle of a strategic development plan, so one land use plan for the region. They won't mind me telling you that wasn't always a journey. Sometimes there have been tensions because, our city deal is predicated on one member, one vote, and we've moved to a very different model for our strategic development plan, which is based on population size and land mass, which takes into account rural areas, which is really important when we're thinking about the type of growth that we want in the future. But I think really what we're trying to do is to see, wealth creation as not just the preserve of the private sector. The public sector and productivity in the public sector is going to be key to delivering a successful city deal, and making sure that we take time to unlock the power of things like public procurement and public purchasing, because that in itself can create new markets, new ideas, and new opportunities. So just to draw this to a close, I've talked about challenges and missions. Really important that we're focused on some of the big problems that we're trying to solve, rather than, probably repeating some of the things that we've done in the past and trying to do them a little bit better. So that's been quite critical in our thinking, especially in the Cardiff Capital Region, if we're going to try and meet and make our contribution to the 2.4% R&D target that UK government has set. We've also tried to focus much more than on just single sectors. The evidence base that we have shows that we should be trying to create inclusive ecosystems and clusters. And again, compound semiconductors is a really, really good example of that. It was our first investment as a city deal. For £40 million, we got about 500 million in private leverage. If we grow the cluster to its maximum, we can create about 7,000 really high-skilled jobs with really strong starting salaries of about £50,000. We can embed the supply chain and create those multiplier effects, which we're seeing all of the time, and embed that sovereign technological capability within the Cardiff Capital Region. Our bid to UK Government for Strengthened Places has just gone in this morning, £44 million. If we're able to do that, there is real potential, I think, for the Cardiff Capital Region to claim comparative advantage around this sector. And for me, the priority is to get, some of the young people that live where I used to live, who perhaps are not as engaged with the world of work, who are perhaps using their skills for different purposes, because they're so technologically gifted. My own personal aims and ambitions is to make sure, that they are included in this kind of prosperity. So, critical success factors, I've just mentioned that very, very quickly. There's some other work that we're doing as well around cluster build with cyber, with medical tools and diagnostics, with the creative industry as well, which is interesting, and with the public sector, which I've already spoken about. Everybody knows about the metro, but again, the whole of the Cardiff Capital Region will not benefit straight away from the metro. So we are putting in place additional interventions around Metro Central and Metro Plus to ensure that every area has some benefit. They can see the signs of prosperity coming to them. So Metro Plus is about 10 sustainable transport schemes. It's about making sure that we embed modal shift and that behaviour change at a local level. And we think about some of the opportunities around renewable energy, around digital connectivity. Because when you come to our city deal, you've got to show that you're adding value, that you're creating those multipliers, that some of those additionality benefits can be brought to the table. So again, this links to some of our ambitions for trying to grow some of those key clusters and some of those key industries of the future. So it's not all about big projects, sometimes it's about distributing growth so everybody can be a part of it. So just to round up then, I think there are some critical success factors which pose some real challenges to us in the Cardiff Capital Region. I think influence is one of them. Until recently, we didn't have a single representative on the board of UK Research and Innovation, that non-departmental body that I spoke about with a huge £6.5 billion budget. We didn't have representatives on the 8 funding councils, including Innovate UK, that sat within that. They've recently gone out to recruitment, and we've tried to push to make sure that we have Welsh representation. So I'm hoping that's going to bear fruit pretty quickly. Fiscal levers and incentives is really, really important as well. Our city deal is an investment programme. It comes from Treasury, local government and Wales government, but beyond that, we've got to think much more about tax increment financing, about using our NNDR base, about innovation income tax, about patent box, R&D tax credits, you name it. These are all of the different measures and levers that we have to bring to the table if we're going to reach this goal of being a lot more self-sufficient in the future. So coming to one of my frustrations then with the Gateway review process, and I'm hopeful that we can influence this in the next few months because we are about to go into our first Gateway review. And the criteria that we have for the Gateway review is really frustrating because it just takes into account money out the door. So whilst I've been stood here and talked to you about mindset change and culture change, and it's about money back in and recycling it, and maybe not even spending city deal money, because if we can get it from other places, surely that's a sign of success. But apparently not. It is very traditional, money out, if you're spending it, you're doing okay. And that is not what we're trying to do. So that's a conversation that we have to take with Wales government and UK government. But we can't be driving reverse behaviour here if we're serious about what we're trying to achieve. So tilting the playing field is really important. Dubrick mentioned the Shared Prosperity Fund. I think we're building good foundations. I think from a capital region perspective, we're agnostic about who gets shared prosperity funds, how it's administered, but we're really interested in what happens with it and the value that can be created. Kevin, I don't know if you mentioned this morning your work for OECD, which will look at regional governance and regional investment structures and how we can move ahead in a more productive way. And again, for me, it comes down to some basic issues around trust, not caring about ceding control. Our regional cabinet has ceded a bit of control to our private sector because they are now our investment panel. But they don't mind because they know that the experts can do their bit and they can sit back and lead and make the right decisions on the basis of the evidence that's put in front of them. And I think that's a good principle that we should think about adopting across the board. So finally, the Cardiff Capital Region is a big and diverse space. There are two big cities there, a capital city and in Cardiff and Newport as well. But what we're trying to do is to ensure there is something for everyone in the Cardiff Capital Region. Not just a city region, we're a region with cities, but also suburban areas, rural areas, valley areas. This is not a hierarchy and one way of working. It's a network about ensuring that everybody feels valued and that everybody has a voice. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Kelly. We've got 10 minutes for questions and discussion. Somebody who hasn't spoken before, Victoria.
Hi, thank you for that.
Could you introduce yourself?
My name's Helen Cunningham, I'm from the Becky Foundation. So I was interested in your first slide when you mentioned resilience, because that's something I think is particularly important for the city region area, considering that we have a large portion of it in the valleys where we have economies that are fragile and have had experience of successive downturns. So my question is around how the city deal is going to ensure that benefit really does reach those places that are actually furthest from the city, the heads of the valleys in particular, which we talked about this morning. Bearing in mind we've got a Welsh government that's got a valley net zero valley to the task force, so they've made a recognition that there needs some kind of dedicated resource to valleys. And in terms of how the assets of the valleys are being considered in that, you mentioned that you're avoiding single sections, but bearing in mind the valleys, in particular the heads of the valleys, still have a not insignificant manufacturing sector, how that's been taken into account with the work you're doing. So there's a few questions.
Yeah, sure. I'll give you some practical examples in trying to answer that. So if you take the example of compound semiconductors, what we're finding is when we sit down and we properly map the supply chains, innovation is happening right across the region. It's a real myth that this just happens in our cities. And we find a cluster of companies who are starting to benefit from some of the investment we're making in Newport and Cardiff. Now, to be totally frank, that's been by accident. It hasn't been by design, but we're learning how to do that by design. So some of the companies that we're starting to attract to our cluster, when they're coming to us to relocate, we're able to take them to some of those far-flung locations where they can put down roots and they can establish local workforces, which really does promote local wealth building in a different way. We've got a couple of examples of that. The really important thing about the investment fund I explained to you is that even though there's more of a traditional innovation fund, which is about wealth building, it's about IP generation, R&D, there's an infrastructure fund. There's also a challenge fund. So the idea of the challenge fund is that we think that sometimes we need to shine a light on the answers and the things that we don't know about. So we put about 150 million into the challenge fund, and the purpose of that is to set big challenges in priority areas and places that can give us different solutions and answers. So one of the things that we're talking to Welsh Government about at the moment, they've got their experimental fund around the foundation is about us developing a successor fund for those value areas to really promote sort of local place and prosperity around some key themes, like social care, like housing, and there's a couple of some manufacturing sectors that we want to focus on as well. So there will be some targeted intervention, but I think the key point is that when we do things like inward investment, we very often think the job of inward investment is to get it in, and that's it. No, the job of inward investment is to make sure it serves all of those communities, that it keeps the spend local, that it creates those supplier effects, so those places can feel the benefits. So there's just some examples of how we're trying to achieve that. I mean, it's not perfect and it's difficult, but I think it really needs us to leverage what we already have and also target some quite specific initiatives.
So,
Robert Chapman. Kelly, this is a deliberate question. It's not meant to trip you up. It's more, it's actually aimed at just highlighting a point. Is it fair to say that projects can still happen outside of city deals?
Yeah, of course.
And I asked the question deliberately just to highlight the point, because the theme of this conference is about city deals and city deal monies, which are predominantly influenced by Westminster, with some support from Welsh Government. But it is about city deals approved by Westminster, fundamentally. And they dictate the outputs. But there are projects that can happen outside of city deals. So with reference to the question earlier on about the Devon Foundation, the Skyline project, for example, in the Valleys is something that's developing outside of the city, which is about that place and communities.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. I take the point, and I think if we just focus on city deals, then something is seriously amiss. I think it's what I've tried to present today is less about the city deal and more about the city region and creating the conditions for those things to happen and those things to flourish. And I think the bit that we've got to get much better at, because I don't think what we're doing at the moment is nearly good enough, is joining up, co-investing, thinking about leverage, thinking about relationships, about how we could create those connections and alignments, because that's what will really leverage in those bigger opportunities. And again, I think we really need to think about some of the fundamentals to enable us to do that. Otherwise, it's sort of heads down and the silo thinking I mentioned in my presentation.
Yes, Jen Q from the Industrial Communities Alliance.
sorry, could you speak up, Greg?
Sorry, Jen Q from the Industrial Communities Alliance. You mentioned your strength in places bid. I mean, not everyone maybe will pay with what the strength in places process is. Can you elaborate a bit about it?
Yeah, it's a UK government programme run through UK Research and Innovation, and what they are looking to do is to make investments in places that can take really strong research base and convert that into economic strength of place. So the government have run its first round of the Strength in Places Fund, and what they're looking for is the signs that industrial scale clusters are being created. But they're not just looking at the industrial aspects, they're looking at the potential to solve societal problems as well. So we submitted a bid around growing the compound semiconductor sector for the whole of the region. We got down to the final 20, we had some seed corn funding, and today our bid has gone in for about 44 million. So half coming from UK government, half coming from academia, the private sector, and the Cardiff Capital Region with Welsh Government.
Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria from the Devon Foundation. I wanted to come back to a point you made at the beginning about inclusive growth, where you said they were two sides of the same coin. I think I would suggest that they're actually quite different things. So inclusive growth is not just something we might all want, but it's about how you support economic development. And it means asking tough questions about who benefits and where benefits. Now, work we've done for the Wales Co-op Centres identified 5 key themes, and they were about supporting making sure that people at the bottom end of the income distribution, and in particular quality groups, benefited from economic change. And yet the list of projects that you put at the end, the compound semiconductors, the supporting high skills, the connectivity, they are all the kinds of projects that do not benefit the least well in society. The kinds of things that we know work for lifting prosperity and solving poverty are things like investing in level 2 skills and below, in improving numeracy and literacy, investing in bus services. I mean, inclusive growth is not just a word that you scatter around strategies. It raises some really big challenges about how you do it. And I've just add as an add-on at the end, the foundation economy is fine, but it has to be for everywhere. It's not something that you just point at the values, which we challenged the Minister on this, Deputy Minister on this. But there are real risks with it, because the foundation economy has some of the worst paid, worst jobs that there are in the economy. So unless you twin growing the foundation economy with addressing those really poor terms and conditions, what you risk doing is embedding and entrenching poverty and inequality in the areas where you direct the foundation.
Yeah,
So it's a real plea.
I don't
not to use
disagree.
words.
No, I don't disagree with any of that, and I think you can take comfort from the fact that we have done quite a bit of work in this area. It's not just a term you go around. We've got a cabinet member in Councillor Anthony Hunt in 45 who's dedicated now to the inclusive growth agenda. And the point that I made at the beginning, Victoria, was that not so much perhaps are the two sides of the same coin, but I don't know why we differentiate anymore between growth and inclusive growth. You know, I'm not quite sure that, you know, what I'm saying is, shouldn't all growth be smart, sustainable and inclusive? Do we really need some of this GBA-led stuff that we've seen as so important in the past? You know, are there new metrics, are there new ways of defining the kinds of growth that we need in regions such as Cardiff and its wide hinterland? Now, coming back to some of those projects I mentioned, because this is a really important point, our challenge fund isn't just Forth Valleys, our challenge fund can be deployed and applied everywhere. And projects like compound semiconductors, we are seeing benefits. We are working with companies in locations that you wouldn't expect to find in the region, where they're taking on more workers. We're investing in some of those skill packages that you mentioned. Because, you know, where I come from, I've grown up with a lot of people who were bright, talented, they've got fantastic technology skills, but they use them to sell drugs. Yeah? And those kids with those brilliant innate skills, we shouldn't be consigning to a life in and out of prison. They should be part of some of this stuff where they can, you know, inject real perspective, they can inject new energy, new ideas. So part of the work that we're trying to do around skills is to make sure that we achieve that balance. Things like Metro Plus, which, as I've said, is a scheme for all 10 local authority areas, is about improving the fundamentals, such as local bus. So I don't want you to think for 1 minute this is, you know, same old, but we're just littering the terms now and then. Because for a lot of us who are involved with this, our motivations are deeply personal. And I think, again, that's a message that our politicians would want me to reinforce to you.
Last question. Sorry.
Hi, I'm Eris Edmonds from Public Health Wales. We talked about human capital being a key part of the city digital growth, and obviously productivity initiative. Health and wellbeing really key there. If you want to get the most out of people, they need to feel well. And obviously, for people to engage in skills programs, new employment, again, health and wellbeing or health can be a barrier to that, but actually people's health and wellbeing need to be considered in supporting people to access those opportunities. And it's also really important in terms of the ageing workforce, is how do we enable people to stay in the workforce for longer. A lot of people are going to be having more and more chronic health conditions. We need to be enabling and supporting people. So I'm just interested in how the city deals engaged with the health sector in considering the wellbeing of the population. What do you expect to come out of the deal for the wellbeing of the population? Also, how are you going to support people to access these opportunities?
Yeah, I think the prospect, I mean, our aim isn't just about the productivity or the competitiveness of the region, it's about the overall prosperity, which I think has that impact upon well-being. So in terms of our investment framework and some of the criteria that we define to make sure that we're focused on the right projects, not the easy ones, well-being is part of that criteria. There will be specific programs like our Skills for the Future stuff. I mean, our Skills for the Future program's got to radically change. At some point, it's been quite embedded in, you know, apprenticeships and graduate schemes, which are fine, but we need to be thinking about open jobs and intelligent labour markets and portfolio careers and, you know, how we really make sure. I mean, there's a brilliant app, I don't know if you've seen it, My Future, developed by a former PE teacher, who's really trying to break down the barriers where people feel that to access programmes and jobs, they must submit CVs, go through application forms. you know, it's contemporary things like this that we've got to support, I think, to make some of those key breakthroughs. But again, the city deal isn't a checklist where everyone can say, you haven't mentioned that, where's this? We hope by creating the conditions through the Cardiff Capital Region, these benefits will emanate and you will see them in all of the areas, which is why I use the donor economics thing. You know, rather than focus on every single thing we've got to do, like we've got check boxes, if we do create the right environment, I feel we've got a better chance at some of these things happening in the right way.
Kelly, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll break up for lunch. Back at 1:15, where Rob Stewart will be speaking, then followed by Quinn from Heritage Beyond representing the Midwest Partnership. And then we'll have a panel discussion with us finishing probably by about 3:30, 24. Thank you.
As I said, we went through a period of review. That review was very helpful. There were two that were carried out, one independent, commissioned by the two governments, one internal, commissioned by myself and the Joint Committee. Pleasing to note that the recommendations coming out of those reviews were consistent. So key ones were appointment of a managing director for the city region. You'll have heard from Kelly Byrne this morning, who's obviously doing a grand job in the Cardiff Capital Region in that role. We're appointing, or seeking to appoint, a similar person to take on that role. And what that allows is an independent managing director, separate from our chief executive, separate from public sector, so who could be a front-face engagement with both governments, but engagements with the private sector as well. So we'll be seeking to fill that role very shortly. We're also expanding our economic strategy board, and the strategy board is made up entirely of private sector individuals who advise the Joint Committee and the City Region in terms of investments, delivering projects, opportunities and others. And at the moment we've got 5 very, very good members, but we're seeking to fill the gaps in sectors that we don't currently have representation from. And again, opportunity is unknown what the SP roles are, but if anybody from their sectors wishes to put their hand up to join the SP, we welcome support. So, as you can see there, Swansea City projects are already underway with delivering our digital arena as part of the city centre redevelopment, and also the digital tech village, which is up on the screen at the moment, applying applications into that. So, again, emphasising that delivery on the ground is outstripping the release of the money from governments. Live development, just a specific focus on my Swansea one, seen as I'm here as Swansea leader as well. Construction started early part of this year. We've appointed Buckingham Group as the construction partner, and they're on site. Successful Meet the Buyer event, really important as part of our procurement strategy across the region, keeping the spend local. So we had an event with Buckingham. Whilst Buckingham are not a regional-based company, the packages of work that come out of that contract are going to local suppliers, keeping the spend local, very, very important. Ambassador Theatre Group are already signed up to run the facility for 30 years. And again, they're committed to delivering 200 events a year into that facility. Again, really important for giving people reasons to visit Swansea as a city over the coming years. The hotel operator, again, one of the crazy things about local authorities in Wales compared to our English counterparts, we can't actually legally build a hotel. We've got to go out and get somebody to do it for us. The Welsh Government are addressing the problems that the local government have, and I'll come back to that in due course. But giving us the freedoms that our counterparts in England have in terms of general power of competence. Put really simply, we have to find a specific power to do some of the things we like to do as councils at the moment. In England, you can basically do whatever you like as long as it's not unlawful. And we're moving to that model to say. Again, it's crazy for me to have to go out and procure somebody to do something I can do myself at the moment. As part of the development, there are multi-storey car parks being built, some new retail and some new living accommodation, as well as a brand new coastal park, and we're on track to open early 2021. And just the metrics underneath there as well, we're looking at several hundred or several thousand construction jobs or several hundred permanent jobs as part of the development. And again, every one of these projects will have been through the Treasury Green Book, so the numbers in terms of economic uplift, in terms of productivity, and the number of jobs created are ones that have been provided back to us by Treasury using their Green Book model. They're not figures or impacts that we've dreamt up ourselves. Multipliers. Before I go on to those, I just wanted to give you an update in terms of where we are with the rest of the project. So we've got 2 projects over the line out of the 11 over there. The next tranche, the next 5, are making their way through at the moment. So Neath the Talbot, if you will recall, had a steel science project, a Factory of the Future project, had what we call the Centre of Excellence for Next Generation Services, based on Terry Matthews' entrepreneurial model. It's worked very well in Canada. And Neath also leads on the Homes as Power Stations project, which is around building the next generation of energy efficient homes, but that is a regional project which every authority is participating in. Neath have done a huge amount of work, and we're about to see a refocused set of those projects coming back to the City Deal Joint Committee, and we anticipate giving those formal approval to proceed to final sign-out in due course. Pembrokeshire have their tidal energy project, and again, significant discussions over recent months around an accelerated funding profile to assist that project. We expect that one to also get support for the next joint committee. And then, of course, the digital project, which is the central theme that runs through. In Swansea already, we've worked with Openreach to input the infrastructure ready for 5G, but it's about making sure that we have the smart city, smart transport corridor, and smart rural infrastructure that we need to drive the economic growth across the region using 5th generation and other modern telecommunications. So, whilst we've got 2 approved, I would say another 5 or so projects are in the second tranche, ready to come forward for approval. Our question back to government is, we're moving fast as a region, you need to give us money faster to keep pace with that spend. So, that's a challenge to the government from us. Multipliers, because I know one of the discussions today is, do city deals actually assist cities? I can tell you now, we've not had interest in Swansea City and in the region at the level I think we're having at the moment, ever. And it's not a competition with Cardiff and the capital region. Wales, South Wales is competing with the rest of the world, it's competing with the rest of the UK. So that we are not competing with our regional partners, but what we are doing here is trying to make sure that we're on everybody's radar, that we're working collaboratively. Kelly and I have already discussed a joint approach to MIPIM next year between the capital region and the Swansea Bay City region, getting out there to sell investment opportunities across the South Wales economic corridor. But here's a tangible example of what happens when you have a city deal. So Skyline, New Zealand company, run high quality tourism attractions across the world, looking for its first European base. Swansea came across its radar. We worked with them to assist them in getting all of the necessary work done around the evaluation of the site on top of Kilbay Hill. They then have signed heads of terms with us. They've got in principle agreement from Welsh Government to grant and investment into that facility. We expect a planning application from them early next year, with construction starting soon after and an opening 2022-23. Potential for a conservative potential for 500,000 visits in this area, and it delivers 4 luges, 2 zip lines, a gondola ride and a chairlift facility, as well as a visitor attraction on the top of Kilbay Hill. So again, they were very clear. City Deal was the hook for them coming in and taking Swansea as a place to invest. Obviously, Cardiff's, a big part of Cardiff's current delivery is the South East Wales Metro. we're working with Transport for Wales on the South West Wales Metro. Again, to remind you, we deliberately excluded that from our city deal ask because we were in good faith negotiating with the UK government on electrification at the time. And again, they whipped that one away from us, and I still think it's a travesty for this region that they didn't electrify all the way through to Carmarthen or beyond, to be honest with you. Certainly, what we've done is therefore work with the Welsh Government, Transport for Wales on a proposal for a metro. Secretary of State for Wales kindly offered £20 million to establish a station at Felindre. Fine as far as it goes, but when they're spending nearly £100 billion on HS2 and Crossrail, I think £20 million is not enough, quite frankly. So we need a much bigger slice of the pie in terms of our rail and bus infrastructure for this region. So these two slides just give you an idea of where we see some of the stations in the Neath Valley and Neath and Talbot, as well as Swansea to the west. There is a separate discussion going on as part of this around Carmarthenshire and Pembrokeshire around the stations there. But transport is a key element of what we will need to deliver as a region going forward, and we expect the formal proposals on this to go to Welsh Government next month. Now again, it's about the city deal, because if we weren't working as a joint committee in our region, then developing schemes like this just simply wouldn't be possible. So again, it's another multiplier effect in terms of what we're doing. Western Powerhouse, as I mentioned before, collaboration between the capital region and ourselves, but it goes further than that. We've also signed up to be part of what they call the Great Western Powerhouse, or the Great Western Gateway. I don't think we've settled on a title yet, but it runs from Swindon to Swansea, and it gives you a cohort of a population in excess of 2 million people, an economy of around 105 billion. But again, in terms of an offer to the rest of the world, it's a coherent offer around selling the South Wales corridor, selling the cities and the communities that surround those cities in terms of an economic offering. And again, is based on collaboration between the city deals that operate both in Wales and across the border. So that was a whistle-stop through in terms of where we are. I remain very confident in terms of the delivery of the deal. And really, you know, I don't think we would be seeing the economic activity in the area currently if it weren't for the fact that we had secured a city deal for this region. So, Chair, very, very happy to take questions on any of that.
Kevin Morgan.
Question?
Yes, of course.
Thank you, Robert. Extremely interesting presentation. As a devil's advocate, can I just say, you know, on the one hand, 2.5 years since Cameron signed the deal with the former Prime Minister, and on some ways of looking at it, not a penny spent officially yet in that 2.5 years. On the other hand, because you were here this morning, I hope colleagues will forgive me for mentioning it again, you have some world-class tech in your region. I'm thinking of the, you know, the advanced manufacturing sector you've got in SA1. Crying out for recognition, crying out for support. And as I said this morning, if that centre was in the Basque Country, they'd go over in a rash. And I could never understand why something like that, clearly world-class tech outfit, never made it through to your portfolio.
So, two aspects to that. I think the first thing is, what the bloody hell have you been doing really for the last 2.5 years? I think that was a polite way of putting it, right? So, I'm going to be very clear on that. Again, it's not criticism, but we went through a very different path to the Cardiff capital region in terms of securing the deal. We had a different government in London with a different approach to city deals. We were forced into defining, to a very, very detailed degree, what our projects look like before we could get a signature on a paper from either the Prime Minister or the First Minister. Whereas the capital region had a sum of money allocated, and you know, Kelly and the team there are still looking at where 400 million or odd of that is going to be allocated. We therefore had had to put in place all of the governance to support the delivery of those projects which are already formed, and then go through a very almost painful approval process. Because if you think getting something approved by one government is difficult, try it with two, especially when they're a different colour, especially when the leaders of one of them keeps changing. So, it is a difficult thing to manoeuvre, but I think we've got to a much better stage. So that's the first thing. So we've had the governance in place, we've had to secure things like retention of non-domestic rates to be able to support some of the reinvestment projects. So we've done a lot of that. In terms of how we got there, well again, we were heavily forced at the time into what could be in the deal and what couldn't. Our initial ask actually was around 480 million, I think it was, Steve, wasn't it, in terms of the two governments? And it was very clear from the government in London that was too much. They couldn't give our region that much money. So we were forced down into distilling the projects down into 4 themes, 11 projects to support what they believed were the core fixes. Now, all I would say is, I mentioned the metro there. The metro isn't part of the city deal at the moment, but it could easily become Project 12. And as the capital region has done, we've had similar discussions with the Welsh Government about creating an investment fund, again, potentially managed by the Development Bank of Wales. There is nothing to stop us adding further projects with funding into the deal. So there is no closed door on this. And I was just going to say, in terms of what the Welsh Government are looking at in terms of how regional structures work across Wales, I believe there's a real opportunity under the corporate joint committees or whatever, bringing together, the joint transport authorities, economic development, regional planning, all of those things, under the right conditions and on the right footprints, could really help. We're still waiting to see the detail on that from the Welsh Government at the moment, but the door's not closed here, and actually, if we ever ended up with just 11 projects, I think we failed.
Can I come back on? Sorry.
At our event in March, we had Professor Andrew Pike look at all city deals. And he made the comment that every city deal seems to have a stadium or a arena. We also had Professor Mark Barry talk about the importance of transport in city deals. I think he mentioned no transport in your original plan. And I'm just wondering, in the case of Swansea City Deal, what academic input was there in an early stage? I mean, there's an enormous academic literature about what works and what doesn't work in economic development. But I can't see evidence that there is any engagement in the Swansea City Deal in these areas. In Cardiff, you've got a transport system, so even if it goes sort of pear-shaped, you've got something left. In the case of Swansea, if these things don't work, what's left for the local community? I got an email from the BBC this morning asking me about unemployment rates in Swansea and why they're so high. They know about Blind Gwent and other parts of Wales. So I just want to know, the joined up thinking, it seems like you put 12, 11 projects together, which may have been supported by pressure groups, rather than a coherent strategy.
No, absolutely agree. Absolutely disagree with all that. Let's because the Cardiff Swansea comparison is not a fair one. Because again, it would be right if you wanted to say Cardiff chose the transport solution because it has 10 communities and it is the capital city. It already has a number of arenas. Actually, Cardiff is out of sync with the rest of Wales, right? As a city, right? Cardiff probably doesn't need a city deal as a city, because it does very well on its own, right? And I would love to be in a position where, as leader of Swansea, I didn't have to intervene to create jobs, to actually fix the failure of the private sector in the area. And we've had market failure in Swansea for many years. So I could make a case for a transport system, and I do with the Secretary of State for Wales regularly, and he comes back to me to say, you won't get approved in the Treasury because you don't have enough demand for the services to make them economically viable to invest in, right? So that's the answer I get back from the Secretary of State for Wales, which is why we only had 20 million offered for a station on the outskirts of Swansea. On the basis of, are we just putting up an arena because every other city is doing it? No, it's based on a strategic piece of work that's been done over a period of about 8 years. And it goes to the heart of what are the economic problems within Swansea as a city. We have a position where we had too few people living in the city, too few people working in the city. We had low rent accommodation there, so we had loads of derelict buildings which were uneconomical for people to invest in. We had a position where we were putting lots of good people out of our universities, but they were actually leaving the region rather than being able to sort of set up businesses and support here. Actually, they were leaving here to go and set up businesses in Cardiff. I wanted to stop that. So it is based on a lot of academic research, but it's also based on real-world research. And I know it's probably unpopular to say in a university, but it's not just about the academics, it's about the reality and the expertise coming from the private sector about what we needed to do to fix the problems specific to Swansea. Now, I've used the word Swansea a lot, but there are different challenges in Neath Talbot, in Carmarthenshire and in Pembrokeshire, and that's why the projects in those parts of the region are different, because they are the projects that were chosen as the specific answer to the challenge they have in their area. So I do disagree with your analysis, I do disagree with your conclusion. Sorry about that, but I think that's where we are.
David, would you like to come back?
No, I mean, that's fair enough. All I was asking about, I don't think academics have got all the answers, and the reason that we design these sort of events is to bring people like yourself, academics, together to discuss the literature. So I've never suggested we had all the answers. I just think in the case of Swansea, perhaps somebody could have started by listening to, looking at some of the evidence that I may be not there.
And again, if we haven't shared the base evidence, because there's a mass amount of baseline evidence that we've used to support. I mean, because again, Treasury, Welsh Government are not going to give us millions of pounds unless we've made a really strong economic case for it.
Can I raise something that was discussed this morning, which is the issue of rural areas missing out really from all this in relation to the Swansea Bay. You've got huge swathes of rural areas where you would have thought there would have been some projects that would be very appropriate in terms of developing some areas like agriculture, for example.
Yep. Again, we were limited in terms of everything that could be in the deal at the start. So digital infrastructure was seen as a driver to help a lot of industries in itself. There's a golden thread that runs through the deal. As I said, transport was being dealt with separately outside of the deal. And in terms of specific projects within Carmarthenshire and within Pembrokeshire, those are the ones that were brought together that they felt was the best project for them, or project for them to take. I would say, Swansea itself is a large part a rural authority, because outside of the city you've got Gower and all the stuff to the west. It's as rural as many parts of Carmarthenshire or Pembrokeshire.
We could go on that, but I
in all the regeneration schemes, projects I've been involved in the past, one of the hardest things is to brigade the way that you can spend the special money that comes down with the ordinary spending that you've got. And I noticed that in your presentation, the focus of the Swansea deal is very much on place and physical buildings rather than on people. Have you been able to get education, for example, to change its act to respond to the future skills that we're going to need?
Yeah, so again, I didn't reference it in what I said, but there is another cross-cutting project within the deal called Skills and Talent. It's exactly about that. It's about making sure the curriculum is aligned with the skills that we will need for the economy we created, because this is about diversification of our economy. That's one of the aims here. At the moment, we are, as the gentleman said there, we're heavily reliant on public sector, and given the austerity measures, it's a smaller public sector than it used to be, so we're disproportionately hit. But also, we're reliant on a lot of old industries like steel, coal in the area, and again, about the industry we're trying to create here are the industries of tomorrow. So as part of the Skills and Talent project, it is about aligning the curriculum in schools with our tertiary and then university outputs to make sure we're putting people into the workforce with the skills that we need. Now, one of the constant complaints I get from employers is people come out, but they're not ready to go into work. They don't come out box ready from education. How do we help and get industry to help us shape the courses that are taught in our schools and our colleges and universities so that that problem is mitigated? So there is a people-focused project in there. Of course, there are other projects in there that have a people element to them. But you're right, a lot of the Swansea ones are physical builds.
I'm going to take a few more questions. I have the gentleman here on my left.
Robert Chapman, sorry, I think Ted's taken the words out of my mouth already, to be fair, so I was musing on what Kevin Morgan referenced as the exemplar project. So that's not been given a funding vis-a-vis the arena, which some might say is a vanity project. Point one. Point two, the investment in people skills to give them a better chance of making a contribution to the local economy. So these things have been said previously.
Yeah. I want to challenge the vanity project, Betty. Yes, as a politician.
How does it benefit in a regeneration sense for people in the locality?
Okay. So I'll just take the first point because, again, as a politician, I have to keep my job in 3 years' time, and I come back to people and they will judge whether it's a vanity project or not. So I get the ultimate test on that one.
Short-termism.
Not short-termism. If you know Swansea well, and I'm assuming you might do, you will notice that we are struggling as a city. We don't have enough jobs in the city. We don't have enough reasons for people to visit the city. We've got very old, archaic offering, in fact. We are being hit by out-of-town shopping, we're hit by internet shopping as many of the other cities are. So what does the arena do? Well, it provides us with 200 events a year in the city, 200 times a year where we will be drawing people into the city that wouldn't otherwise come. As part of that, we're also then building across the road as another consequential of it, a public sector hub, as Cardiff have done quite successfully. But if I don't repurpose my city centre to be one that will survive and will be viable in the 21st century, then what is the other option for stimulating and making the city centre of Swansea successful? One of the evidence that we've seen from people like Cushman Wakefield and our other expert advisors is that the arena and the draw that it would create, the dwell time that it would fix in terms of, we get some daytime shopping at the moment, then the city centre goes dead from 4 p.m. We've got a lively nighttime economy some nights of the week driven by student population largely, but we don't have a functioning city centre in the way that places like Cardiff, Birmingham and London do. So it's a key part of fixing the viability of the city centre, and it's not a vanity project.
Thank you, Chair.
Was there someone else?
Sorry, is there someone else? Oh, yes, there is.
Sorry, just as a